Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Politics Now. We're talking about modern politics in modern America. And today, we're going to be giving our predictions on the 2024 Senate race. And yeah, let's get into that. So, first off, Senate race in 2024 is going to be a very, very tight race, but Republicans do have the advantage in the race simply because they, more so or not, have to flip two pretty Republican states that vote Republican in the presidential election and are still decently Republican in Senate races. So if they can flip those, then they have control of the Senate. And that is a fairly decent task. It won't require that much campaigning. It's not going to be like a 50-50 chance of retaking the Senate. It's more going to be like a 75-25 chance. And really, the only way that they can not retake the Senate is if they have a bad night and somehow screw it up. But yeah, let's get into the prediction. So we got the safe red states. They're going to vote red no matter what. You have a lot of these states where they vote red in the general election, and really, they're not going to go any different in the Senate race. They don't have that weird Montana type thing where they vote 20 points Republican and somehow they go Democrat in the Senate. It's very weird, but you have all these other safe states that I don't really see going at all to the Democrats, and I'm going to include West Virginia. Now, it does have a Democrat, but they pretty much got no chance of holding that seat. I'm honestly still shocked that they won that seat, but now they don't really have any chance of holding that seat. It was an extremely close race, and that was when all the odds were stacked against Republicans, which 2024 is not a year like that. So they should pretty easily take back West Virginia from the Democrats, and you have Indiana, safe red state, votes red pretty much every time. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the safe red states. Now, the safe blue states, you got your usual suspects. You got California, Washington, New Mexico, I'll put there. New Mexico, it's more Democrat than it's less Democrat than some place like Colorado, but in terms of the Senate race, yeah, I don't really see Republicans having much of a chance there. If West Virginia is going to be a safe red, then New Mexico will be a safe blue, and so will Minnesota. I have no idea why they keep voting for Amy Klobuchar. I don't. It's pretty much because Minneapolis rules the state, and they, for some reason, love Amy Klobuchar, so she's probably going to win again, and Minnesota is also a pretty Democrat state, so yeah, Republicans don't really have any decent candidates to put up there to challenge her, and she already has such a strong base that she is probably just going to win it with a very safe majority. Probably not as big as past years, but still big enough. So, the other safe ones are stuff like Vermont, basically the entire New England area, and you have all these states. They vote Democrat every single time, and they're not really going to change anytime soon. So, yeah, that's pretty much all the safe states, and now we're going to get into the sort of competitive, but not really, and these are the likely states. And we're going to start off with the Republican likely states. Texas, I know Ted Cruz isn't that popular in Texas, and I know it's not very, very safe, and there's still possibility for Ted Cruz losing, but still, it's a pretty Republican state, and it leans between likely and safe in Texas, and Ted Cruz really has that advantage where if he was in a competitive state or even a North Carolina type state where it's still pretty competitive there, yeah, he would have no chance of winning. But since he is in a much more Republican safe state than someplace like North Carolina or even Wisconsin or Michigan or even Ohio, yeah, he would have no chance, but the Republican ticket, and especially the down ballot Trump ticket, is really going to carry him to victory. So it's a pretty likely chance that Ted Cruz still stays in Texas. And we're going to include Florida there. Florida, just like the general election, you can put that as a safe state, but it's gone red so recently that you're going to need to put in likely until you get enough data to show that this isn't a one-time thing and that it will actually be a safe red state. So there you go. You got the likely Republican states, and let's move on to the likely Democrat states. And for start, we got Maine. Maine, you got that Republican district, but again, the blue area just completely controls the state. But Republicans still put up more of a fight there than in some place like Minnesota or even New Mexico. And they could flip it if it was an extremely good night, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. And still, it's going to vote Democrat in the general election, and it's going to vote Democrat in the Senate race. So next you got Virginia. I know Youngkin is doing a lot to sort of improve Republican odds in Virginia, but this is still a state that votes +7 or +9 for Biden, and still you got that Democrat tendencies. It's right next to DC, and really Democrats still have a pretty strong pull in the state. So the Senate race, you still will have a much more competitive race, and it would most likely be between likely and leans margins, but still it's going to go Democrat by a couple of points, probably about 5 or 6. But even with how competitive Virginia is getting, it's still going Democrat no matter what. And you can work on making it a more competitive state, but for right now, it's going to go Democrat. And you're not going to really change that this year. So that is the likely Democrat states. And let's go on to the more competitive states, starting with the Republican aisle. And let's start off with Montana. Now, Montana is a weird case because it votes +20 in general elections, and it is a pretty safe Republican state. But in the Senate race, it is just completely over to Democrats. It goes Republicans sometimes. It's just a flip-flopper, and pretty much it's going to go back to Republicans again, where you have a more solid candidate, and Democrats aren't going to have as good of a year as they did in 2022 and 2020, where you still do have that down ballot effect, which could carry the Republicans to victory in Montana. And you just have those voters who are going to make Montana another +20 Trump state, who are also going to be voting on the Senate race. So that could help Republicans win Montana. And there you go. You got your two flips, West Virginia and Montana, and now you have control of the Senate. So that's pretty much all Republicans need to win. They just need to flip Montana and West Virginia, and they got control of the Senate. But we got some more states to go, and let's talk about the other sort of leans Republican state. You got Ohio. Now, Ohio is a recently, kind of like Florida, a very Republican state where you still have the fact that it's moved to the Republican safe column so recently, so you still got the tendencies left, and it's too new to put it in a safe column. And for the Senate race, that is a major thing because you got the Democrat senator who also he has enough support and enough backing that he can make a Senate race very difficult for Republicans. And that's kind of why he was able to consistently win. But he's not really having that right now, and his poll numbers in Ohio have gone down considerably. And given that down ballot effect, it probably could turn what would be a very competitive race into sort of a leans Republican race. So Democrats are likely to lose that seat in Ohio, and Republicans can gain that seat, but it will still be competitive because Democrats have that seat and they are going to make it a tough fight to get it back. But I think Republicans can still do it. So you got the Ohio out of the way, and now we got sort of the swing states for the general election, which are also going to be swing states for the Senate race. So let's start off with Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin, it's very flip-floppy in the Senate race, where it will be flip-floppy in the general election, but still it's more so leaning towards Republicans than Democrats in the general election. That's not necessarily the case in the Senate race, and it leans more so Democrats, which makes it a much more competitive state than something like, I don't know, Arizona or Nevada, or maybe even Pennsylvania. So it leans far enough that it becomes sort of a Michigan in the general election, where it's still technically a competitive race, but it still has a lot more democratic sort of tendencies to give Democrats the victory, and it's more so a 60-40 chance of whether Republicans take it. And given those chances, it's probably going to go by blue by around a point, or maybe even less than a point. It's probably going to be the most competitive Senate race, but yeah, Democrats can still probably win the Senate race there by narrow margins. And now we got Michigan. Michigan, given the fact that it's probably the most Democrat friendly swing state in the general election and the Senate election, yeah, it's probably going to go by sort of Democrat lean margins. It's going to be much more competitive than your average Democrat lean state, but still, you do have the effect of it being a more Democrat friendly state, and Democrats have a much stronger party there than the Republicans, because the Michigan Republican Party is absolutely terrible. It is a complete mess and isn't really competent at actually at winning elections and running an effective campaign. So you you consistently lose there because your own state party is so incompetent, and that's really going to hurt Republicans in the Senate race there, where it could have been a more competitive race like Wisconsin, but because of that incompetency, you're going to give the Michigan to the Democrats by wider majorities, though it will still be competitive. So it's going to be a more so by 2 or 3 points towards the Dems, but still it will be a competitive state. And pretty much the same thing in Pennsylvania. Now, Pennsylvania, it's kind of in between Wisconsin and Michigan in terms of its competitiveness. It's probably going to be won by Dems by either a point or two, but it will still be competitive nonetheless because Republicans have a lot more appeal in there than some place like Michigan, or even places like Nevada or Arizona, where you have the Senate race and Republicans just aren't putting up good candidates, but you still do have that down ballot effect where Trump can turn out his base, but I just don't think that they'll show up in enough numbers and they'll sort of make up for that incompetent candidate and the incompetency of the Republican Pennsylvania Party, where you are likely to lose the Senate race, but it's still going to be by around a point or two. So it will still be competitive, but Democrats are likely to win it. And now we got Nevada and Arizona. Nevada, yeah, it's still probably going to go Democrat. It's going to be a very close election, but it's sort of like Wisconsin, where it's going to be under a point or a point within the margin. But still, you do have the Nevada Democrat Party, where they kind of have a little bit more confidence and they have more competence than the Nevada Republican Party, and Republicans aren't putting up very solid candidates there, so that is going to hurt them. And Trump doesn't have as much down ballot effect in a place like Nevada or even Arizona, so it's going to be a lot harder to get those seats. And given the state of Nevada, it's probably going to go Democrat, but it will still be a very competitive race, even more than someplace like Wisconsin. And now we got the final state, Arizona. And unlike all these other swing states, Arizona is going to go red, and it's still going to be competitive, but you do have that third party, which is going to be stealing a lot of votes from the Democrats, where it's pretty much splitting the vote, where you're going to give Republicans the state, and if you didn't split the vote, yeah, Democrats would win the state, and they would win it by similar margins as Pennsylvania. But because you have that split ticket and you do have that down ballot effect, yeah, Republicans are probably going to win the state by around a point, but still, it is going to be very competitive, even with that split ticket and down ballot effect, because Republicans just are losing and losing and gaining more and more incompetence in Arizona, and that's why it was in 2016 it was a fairly Republican state, and now it's a swing state that leans Democrat. So you either got to fix your incompetency there, or you just got to hope that the third parties ruin Democrat chances of winning the state. But given the data right now, Republicans probably could narrowly win it. But yeah, you got 53 to 47. Republicans have controlled the Senate. It's not a large majority, but it's still a majority. And it's a decent majority that you could still have some Republicans who are sort of rhinos and neocons, where they're going to be squishy and vote vote for Democrat policies, where you have enough votes that you can sort of shut them down and make sure that they don't spoil the vote. And if you win the presidency, you can also have that extra senator where you can have that tiebreaker that stops the sort of squishy rhinos from ruining the vote. And yeah, Republicans win the majority in the Senate, and they win it by a competent majority. Not a great majority, but a competent one. So if you think Democrats could win, leave it in the comments below. If you think that Republicans will win by a wider majority, also leave that in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.